Imagine if the story of humanity wasn't just carved into ancient stones or inked on fragile scrolls, but encoded deep within us, woven into the very fabric of our DNA. Chinese DNA isn't just a biological blueprint, it's a time capsule, a living archive of ancient migrations, forgotten civilizations, and the rise and fall of empires. Hidden in every genetic strand is a silent witness to the triumphs, struggles, and transformations that shaped one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. Scientific discoveries have unveiled something extraordinary. By 9,000 years ago, the genetic markers that define modern East Asian populations were already spread across ancient China. This means that the people walking the bustling streets of Beijing or tending rice fields in the south carry within them the echoes of ancestors from the Neolithic era. While dynasties crumbled, languages evolved, and borders shifted, their DNA remained a constant thread, binding the present to a distant, almost mythical past. Picture ancient communities along the West Liao River, where early humans cultivated millet, laying the foundations of agriculture. But they weren't just growing crops, they were shaping the future of human genetics. Their farming practices fueled migrations, intermixing with other groups, and influencing the genetic makeup of what would become the northern Han Chinese population. It's astonishing to realize that such simple acts of survival, planting seeds, raising families, etched an enduring legacy into the human genome. Even more fascinating is the revelation that the genetic structure of the Han Chinese was firmly established over 3,000 years ago. Think about that. The same DNA that flowed through the veins of ancient philosophers, warriors, and emperors still pulses in the people of modern China. Despite the passage of time, the rise of great dynasties, and the influence of global events, this genetic core has remained remarkably stable, offering a direct, unbroken link to the past. DNA doesn't just record the story of individuals, it captures the saga of entire civilizations. It tells us who we are, where we come from, and how deeply our roots run. So, as we marvel at the achievements of ancient China, the Great Wall, the Terracotta Army, the wisdom of Confucius, remember that their legacy isn't just in monuments and manuscripts. It's in the people themselves, written in their very cells. The story of the Han Chinese isn't just written in ancient texts or preserved in artifacts, it's embedded in their very DNA, a living record of a civilization that has endured for thousands of years. Imagine carrying within you a genetic blueprint that connects you directly to ancestors from over 3,000 years ago. While empires rose and fell, while languages evolved and cultures shifted, the genetic core of the Han Chinese remained remarkably stable, silently recording the history of one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. Genetic research has revealed that the foundation of the Han Chinese gene pool was established more than 3,000 years ago. This isn't just a number. It's a testament to the resilience and continuity of a people whose biological heritage has withstood the tests of time. Picture ancient farmers in the fertile plains near the Yellow River, cultivating millet, establishing communities, and unknowingly passing down not just their traditions but their genetic legacy. Their DNA traveled through generations, surviving wars, dynastic changes, and even the vast migrations that shaped China's diverse population today. One of the most fascinating discoveries is the influence of millet-based farming populations from the West Liao River region. These early agricultural societies didn't just revolutionize food production, they shaped the very genetics of northern Han Chinese. As these communities grew and spread, their genetic markers spread with them, creating a lasting imprint that can still be traced in modern populations. It's like a genetic fingerprint left behind by history itself. But the story doesn't stop there. Despite the vast geographic expanse of China and the countless historical events that could have altered genetic patterns, like invasions, migrations, and cultural shifts, the Han Chinese gene pool remained surprisingly consistent. This genetic stability speaks to the strength of cultural identity, social structures, and the deep-rooted connections that bind generations together. Think about it. The same DNA that once coursed through the veins of ancient philosophers, poets, and emperors is still present in millions of people today. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just something we study, it's something we carry within us. The legacy of the Han Chinese isn't confined to ancient ruins or historical texts. It lives on in every heartbeat, every breath, and every strand of DNA. China's history isn't just etched into its ancient monuments or preserved in dusty scrolls. It flows through the veins of its people, written in their DNA. The story of Chinese civilization is, in many ways, a story of movement, adaptation, and transformation. And nowhere is this more evident than in the complex genetic mosaic shaped by ancient migrations, cultural exchanges, and the ever-changing landscapes of time. Imagine standing at the crossroads of ancient China, where tribes migrated, empires expanded, and cultures collided. Every step taken by these early humans left more than just footprints. It left genetic traces that would ripple through generations. Ancient migrations weren't just about people moving from one place to another. They were about the blending of genes, ideas, and ways of life. This intricate web of movement created the diverse genetic patterns seen in modern Chinese populations today. As early agricultural societies flourished, people began to migrate from northern to southern China, carrying not just their tools and traditions but their DNA. This movement wasn't random. It was driven by the search for fertile land, favorable climates, and new opportunities. As these communities settled in different regions, their genes mixed with local populations, creating new genetic variations and enriching the diversity we see today. But migration wasn't the only force shaping China's genetic landscape. The rise and fall of dynasties, the spread of trade routes like the Silk Road, and even devastating wars all played a role. The Silk Road, for example, wasn't just a highway for silk, spices, and precious goods. It was a pathway for people. Merchants, soldiers, and travelers from distant lands mingled with local communities, leaving behind more than just cultural influences. They left behind their genetic footprints. Adaptation also played a critical role. As humans moved into new environments, their bodies had to adjust to different climates, diets, and diseases. These adaptations left marks on their DNA, influencing traits like immune system responses, physical characteristics, and even how certain populations metabolize food. It's a silent testament to humanity's incredible ability to survive and thrive in diverse conditions. The result of all these migrations, mixings, and adaptations is a genetic tapestry that tells the story of China's ancient past. It's a story written not in ink but in the very code of life itself, connecting modern populations to ancestors who lived thousands of years ago. Every gene, every marker, is a chapter in that story, a living record of how history shaped humanity. History often draws borders on maps, but DNA knows no boundaries. Hidden within the genetic code of the Chinese people are threads that stretch far beyond the borders of ancient China, revealing surprising connections to populations across Asia and even beyond. These unexpected links tell a story of ancient journeys, forgotten encounters, and cultural exchanges that shaped not just China, but the broader human story. Imagine an ancient world where vast deserts, towering mountains, and endless rivers weren't barriers but bridges, pathways that connected distant civilizations. As people migrated, traded, and explored, they carried more than goods and ideas. They carried their DNA, leaving traces of their existence in the most unexpected places. Genetic research has uncovered markers in Chinese DNA that are shared with populations from Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and even regions as far west as Europe. These connections reveal that long before the Silk Road became a bustling trade route, human genes were already traveling those ancient paths. One of the most fascinating discoveries comes from studying ancient genomes found in northern China. These genetic patterns show links to Central Asian groups, suggesting that ancient migrations weren't isolated events but part of a larger web of human movement across the continent. Think about it, long before written records, people were crossing vast landscapes, forming connections that would ripple through generations. Trade routes like the Silk Road played a massive role in this genetic exchange. While we often think of silk, spices, and precious metals moving along these routes, the real treasure was the movement of people. Merchants, explorers, and even armies brought with them diverse genetic backgrounds. When they settled, married, and had families in new lands, they wove their DNA into the genetic fabric of local populations. This silent exchange created genetic footprints that we can still trace today. But it wasn't just trade and migration. Historical events like wars, conquests, and even natural disasters forced populations to move, often blending cultures and genes in the process. The rise and fall of empires, from the Mongol conquests to the expansion of the Han dynasty, left behind not just historical legacies but biological ones too. These surprising genetic connections challenge the idea of isolated ancient civilizations. Instead, they reveal a deeply interconnected human story, one where borders were fluid, and cultures constantly influenced one another. It's a reminder that our history isn't confined to one place or one people. It's a shared legacy written in the language of our DNA. Unlocking the secrets of ancient history isn't just about digging up artifacts or decoding ancient texts. It's about reading the stories written in our very cells. Chinese DNA holds these stories, but how do scientists uncover them? The answer lies in the fascinating world of ancient DNA research, where cutting-edge technology meets the mysteries of the past to reveal details that history books could never capture. Picture an archaeologist unearthing a skeleton buried thousands of years ago. To the untrained eye, it's just bones, fragile and weathered by time. But to geneticists, it's a treasure trove. Hidden within those ancient bones are tiny fragments of DNA, preserved like microscopic time capsules. Extracting this ancient DNA is no simple task. Over time, DNA degrades, breaking into fragile pieces. Scientists must work in sterile, controlled environments to prevent contamination from modern DNA, sometimes even wearing full-body suits to avoid leaving traces of themselves on these priceless samples. Once the DNA is carefully extracted, it undergoes sequencing, a process where advanced machines read the genetic code letter by letter. This is where technology performs what seems like magic. Sequencers reconstruct the ancient genome, piecing together fragments to form a complete picture. But reading the code is just the beginning. The real challenge lies in interpreting it, comparing ancient DNA with that of modern populations to uncover connections, migrations, and even the impacts of historical events. Through this meticulous process, scientists have made groundbreaking discoveries about China's ancient populations. They've traced how early farmers from the West Liao River region contributed to the genetic makeup of northern Han Chinese. They've identified markers that reveal ancient migrations across vast distances, showing how people moved, settled, and blended with other cultures. Each genetic marker is like a breadcrumb, leading researchers deeper into humanity's past. One of the most fascinating aspects is how ancient DNA can reveal things that historical records cannot. Written history often focuses on the rise and fall of empires, the deeds of kings, and the outcomes of wars. But DNA tells the story of everyday people, farmers, traders, families, whose lives may never have been recorded but whose genetic legacy lives on. It's a history that can't be erased, one that survived long after empires crumbled and languages faded. Thanks to these scientific breakthroughs, we now understand that the history of China isn't just found in ancient ruins or ancient scrolls, it's found within its people. Every strand of DNA is a chapter in the human story, and thanks to modern science, we're finally learning how to read it. When we think about history, we often picture ancient scrolls, crumbling monuments, and faded maps. But what if the most accurate record of human history isn't found in dusty artifacts, but within us, in our DNA? Chinese DNA doesn't just reveal personal ancestry. It unlocks the broader story of human civilization itself. It's a biological record of migration, survival, and evolution, offering profound insights into how humanity has developed over thousands of years. Every gene in the human body holds a clue to the past, like pages in an ancient book. For China, one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations, these pages tell a story stretching back tens of thousands of years. Genetic studies have shown how ancient populations spread across vast regions, adapting to different environments, shaping languages, and influencing cultures. These migrations didn't just change landscapes, they changed people, leaving behind genetic footprints that can still be traced in modern Chinese populations. Chinese DNA reveals connections to the earliest human migrations out of Africa, following routes that crossed mountains, rivers, and deserts to reach East Asia. Along the way, ancient humans adapted to new environments, with natural selection leaving distinct marks in their genes. These adaptations influenced everything from skin pigmentation and disease resistance to how the body processes certain foods. It's like nature's diary, recording how humans adjusted to survive and thrive in different parts of the world. But DNA doesn't just tell us where people came from. It reveals how cultures evolved. In China, the genetic evidence aligns with archaeological discoveries, confirming the rise of early agricultural societies, the development of complex civilizations, and even the impact of historical events like the expansion of the Han Dynasty. The genes of modern Chinese populations carry the legacy of these transformations, providing a continuous thread that connects the past to the present. One of the most fascinating aspects is how DNA helps us understand ancient human interactions. Long before borders and nations existed, people from different regions met, traded, and formed communities. Their genetic material mixed, creating the diverse populations we see today. These ancient interactions weren't always recorded in history books, but they are written in our genes, offering a more complete picture of humanity's shared story. What Chinese DNA ultimately tells us is that history isn't just something external, something we study in museums or read about in books. It's something we carry within us, a living record that connects us to ancestors who walked the earth thousands of years ago. It reminds us that while civilizations rise and fall, the story of humanity continues, written in the very code of life itself. History is often seen as something separate from us, tucked away in ancient texts or buried beneath layers of soil. But what if the past isn't just something we uncover, it's something we inherit? Chinese DNA is a living testament to this idea, carrying the echoes of ancestors who walked the earth thousands of years ago. It tells a story not just of individuals, but of entire civilizations, wars fought, migrations made, and cultures that flourished long before written records began. When scientists study Chinese DNA, they are not just looking at biological data, they are reading history encoded in the human genome. This genetic history reveals patterns of migration that stretch back to humanity's earliest days, showing how ancient populations moved across Asia, settled new lands, and interacted with other groups. It's through this genetic storytelling that we've come to understand just how interconnected ancient societies were, with Chinese DNA carrying traces of relationships that span continents. But beyond migration and adaptation, Chinese DNA also reflects the social and cultural forces that shaped human history. The rise of agriculture, for example, didn't just transform how people lived, it influenced who they became. Early farming communities in China not only built the foundations of great civilizations but also passed down genetic traits related to diet, immunity, and even cognitive development. These changes weren't accidental. They were part of humanity's ongoing adaptation to its environment, written directly into our genetic code. What's even more remarkable is how resilient this genetic legacy has been. Despite thousands of years of wars, conquests, and cultural shifts, the genetic structure of many Chinese populations has remained surprisingly stable. This continuity offers a direct, unbroken link to the people of ancient China, those who built the Great Wall, created masterpieces of philosophy and art, and navigated vast trade routes like the Silk Road. Chinese DNA doesn't just tell us about the past. It reshapes how we understand history itself. It reveals that the boundaries we see on maps are recent inventions compared to the deep, ancient connections that unite all of humanity. Our genes tell stories that history books often overlook, stories of ordinary people, forgotten migrations, and the silent resilience of cultures that have endured through time. In the end, the story of Chinese DNA is the story of humanity. It's a reminder that while we may look to monuments and manuscripts to understand our past, the most profound history is written within us, carried silently from generation to generation. Every strand of DNA is a thread in the vast tapestry of human existence, connecting us all to the people who came before. History often feels distant, locked away in ancient ruins or preserved in fragile manuscripts. But the truth is, the most powerful record of our past isn't carved into stone or written on paper. It's written in us. Chinese DNA carries the legacy of thousands of years, a story woven through time, passed silently from generation to generation. It's not just a biological code. It's the living, breathing history of a civilization that has shaped the world. Imagine the countless generations that have come and gone, their lives forgotten by time. Yet their essence lives on within the people of today. The genetic legacy written in Chinese DNA connects the present to the past with unbroken threads that stretch back thousands of years. Every heartbeat, every breath carries the echoes of ancient farmers who first cultivated the fertile lands of the Yellow River, of warriors who defended dynasties, and of philosophers who pondered the mysteries of existence. What makes this connection even more extraordinary is its resilience. While empires rose and fell, while borders shifted and cultures evolved, the DNA of the Chinese people remained a constant witness. It survived wars, migrations, natural disasters, and cultural revolutions, quietly recording the story of humanity in the most intimate way possible. Unlike artifacts that can be lost or destroyed, DNA endures, carrying the essence of ancestors who lived long before history was written. But this isn't just a story of survival. Chinese DNA reveals the triumph of human connection, the blending of cultures, and the adaptability of people through time. It holds the traces of ancient trade routes, like the Silk Road, where merchants from distant lands met, exchanged goods, ideas, and, unknowingly, their genetic material. These encounters left invisible marks, creating a genetic mosaic that reflects the interconnectedness of human civilization. The legacy written in our genes isn't just about where we come from, it's about who we are. It shapes not just our physical traits, but our health, our resilience, and even our connection to one another. It's a reminder that history isn't something outside of us. It lives within us, in every cell, a silent story waiting to be told. So, the next time you wonder about the past, remember this: you don't need to look far. The greatest history lesson is written in your very being. Because while monuments crumble and stories fade, the legacy in our DNA endures, unchanged, unwavering, eternal.